Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Jose Rodriguez, the credit dude, the owner of GotCredit.com. So you might have stumbled upon this video because your credit card limit might have recently got lowered, and it's okay. I know how frustrating it could be. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give you a couple things you could do to either get that limit back or other things you can do to pretty much offset how your credit limit got lowered and how you can avoid this in the future. So sit back and relax and enjoy the show. So you're probably wondering, why did my credit limit get lowered? I didn't do anything wrong. Listen, this happens for many reasons. You're not the first one to get their credit limit lowered, but I can promise you it happened because of one of these reasons. Number one, have you been using the credit card? So have you been using it regularly? Was this a credit card that you're like, oh my God, they lowered it or they closed it and oh yeah, it's a credit card I haven't used in like 6 to 8 months. So you want to make sure that you have credit cards that you aren't using. Make sure you maybe just putting like $25. You're buying milk, you're buying eggs, those expensive eggs, and you're also buying other things that, maybe it's just a really low ticket item. Just to have some activity in that card, it'll prevent it from being lowered. But also, it'll also prevent it from being closed. Now, also look back. In the last 6 to 12 months, have I had any missed or late payments? Now, don't think that just because you don't have 30 days late payments on your credit report that you're scot-free. Am I paying my credit card 15 to 20 days after the due date? Am I paying it just before 30 days? Like, you want to make sure that you're not at risk also on that aspect either, because I've seen a lot of people where they're like, hey, I didn't make a 30-day late payment, but I'm paying it 25 days late, 26 days late. And if that becomes a habit, they might look at it as a risk. So they're like, you know what? Just to avoid any problems with our end, we're going to go ahead and lower your limit because we kind of see a little bit of risky movement that you're doing. So to be safe, we're going to go ahead and lower your limit. The third thing that I've seen is, have you had a recent drop in your credit score? So did you have a new late payment on another card? Did you have a new collection? Are your credit card balances increasing, which is causing you to have more utilization? So you want to look at your credit report. Am I seeing things on here that doesn't look right? Or, you know what? Yep, this is right. This is me. I could understand why they lower my limit because on the 4 of the credit cards that I have, I'm late maxed out, or I also didn't use them, so they closed it. So you want to make sure that you look at your overall credit because that does impact your other credit cards as well. The other thing is probably just because of economic reasons. That sometimes when things are a little crazy in the world, banks get scared and they don't know what to do. They're like, you know what? We just don't know what's going to happen. So let's go ahead and lower the limits on these credit cards of the people that fall within this bracket. And listen, you might not have done anything wrong, but they lowered your limit. So I'm going to show you exactly, if you do fall into one of these 4 categories, how to call and how to get your limits back. But first, let's talk about how does this affect my credit score, because that's the most important thing. If your limits get lowered and if your card gets closed, importantly, your credit score is going to be affected one way or the other. So if your credit card limit is lowered, that is going to affect your overall utilization that you have on your credit report, which affects 30% of your credit score, or about 165 points. So let me break that down to you. Let's say you have a credit card with a $5,000 limit and you have a $1,000 balance. You do have a 20% utilization on that card. Okay, so that's pretty good. You're in the safe zone. It's not too high and it's not paid off completely, but you're pretty much good. Now, let's say if they lower that limit to $2,500, that same $1,000 balance now causes you to have a 40% utilization on that credit card. And that can kind of lower your score and put you like in the red zone a little bit. So it's still the same $1,000, but because they lowered your limit, this is where it ultimately affects your credit score. So now you kind of got to adjust, because if they don't give you the limit back, you kind of want to be around that 10 to 30% sweet spot. So you might have to pay a little bit down, even though you weren't going to when you had that $5,000 limit. So now let's get into the nitty gritty and step by step of how you can get your limit back. The first thing I want you to do is get your credit card, call the number on the back of the card, and find out specifically why. This might have been a mistake. So you might have called and say, hey, listen, I had an X amount of limit and you lowered it to X amount. What happened? Can you please tell me? I'm freaking out. And if you're not comfortable with what the person says over the phone, ask to speak to a manager, ask to speak to the risk department, and call someone until you get the right answer. Listen, this might take you calling 3 to 4 times to get to the right person, but once you do, and it's someone that can actually change the limit back, ask them, what is it going to take for me to reinstate my limit? And what is it going to take to reinstate the limit that I had and or give me a higher one? Listen, it could have been a mistake. Like I told you before, they might have freaked out a little bit because of the economy. So you can, this is kind of like where you kind of got to put your sales hat and your nice talk, okay? You guys say, listen, I've been a customer with you for X amount of months, X amount of years, never had a late payment, never had this, never had that, never had, you can kind of start talking about what it is, building your character a little bit. And this is your chance to fight to get that limit back. This is the easiest way to do it. I promise you. It's not on the app. It's not emailing. It's speaking to someone that actually has the authority to reinstate your limit. Once you get a hold of that person, say, listen, is it okay if I keep your number, if I keep your email? You want to keep that relationship because you want to prove that you are actually eligible for that limit and that you deserve it. The best thing you can do is be nice. Don't be mean. Don't be angry, because at the end of the day, it wasn't the person on the other end of that phone. It was just an algorithm or just a computer that looked at your credit and figured that they had to lower it because of one of several reasons. So the other thing you can do is pay down your balances. This is probably going to be one of the most key things you can do to improve your credit overall, because if they lowered your limit because you have high balances on other credit cards, this is probably one of the things that you can do to get your limit back with this card and other cards if they lowered it there as well. One of the things that you might not realize, right, is remember that $5,000 credit card I was talking about, and let's say they lowered it to $2,500. How are the balances on your other credit cards? Let's say you have a PNC Bank, Wells Fargo, American Express, Chase credit card. They actually do soft pulls on your credit, okay? Every month, every few months. And if they see, wait a minute, this person's late with this card, they have a new collection, they have a maxed out payment here, they have your credit's kind of looking a little crazy, that is an indication of being a risk. And if that's why they lowered your limit, you want to make sure that all of your cards have low balances, all of your cards are being paid on time, because carrying a high balance over time is a risk. And even though the economy might be great, you yourself are a risk. So they close your credit card, and listen, it kind of seems like there's no way to escape it, because as you pay your card down, they lower the limit, you pay it down, they lower the limit, you pay it down, lower the limit. So it kind of can seem like, man, like they keep lowering it every time I pay it down. So make sure you're doing everything possible as you're paying your card down. Go back to the first step and speak to that person that I was telling you. Remember I told you to keep their name, keep their email. So as you're paying your card down and as you're doing everything right in all of your credit cards, you can kind of build that relationship with them, and they're going to be your advocate to help you get your limit back. The third thing you can do is request a credit limit increase on your other credit cards. Now listen, like I told you before, it might not have been your fault as why they lowered this card. So use the other credit cards to catapult, because if your credit score dropped as a result of them lowering your limit, what you could do is offset that by getting a credit limit increase on your other credit cards, either by what was lowered or even more. So let's say that $2,500 that I talked about, that they lowered your credit limit. If you have other credit cards, see if another credit card company will give you that same $2,500. See if maybe 3 will give you $1,000, $1,500. And you could either do this in the app, which I could recommend, or by calling in and just saying, hey, listen, I've been a customer with you for X amount of months. I've been a customer with you for X amount of years. My current limit is this. Am I eligible for a credit limit increase or even an interest rate reduction? You always want to ask that, because it's always good to get that interest rate knocked down, especially on your phone. And remember, do the same thing that I said in step 1. Get the name, get the number, and get the email of the person that has the authority to increase your limit, because next thing you know, you have a nice contact list of a person in every single credit card department that can get you the limit increase. And when you need something, it's actually someone that can actually do it, and you don't have to get transferred 3 or 4 times. So now when you get that limit increase, you can call them back in 6 to 8 months and continue this process to avoid your limits being lowered at any given time. And the other thing you can do, which I do recommend, is opening up a new credit card. Now listen, as long as your credit is good and you don't have a new late payment or a new collection, and they just happen to just close your credit card or lower the limit without you knowing or without anything that you did wrong, just go ahead and try to do a credit card pre-qualify. So just go on the internet, credit card pre-qualify, and put some credit cards that you maybe want to have, and see if they have a pre-qualification link. By submitting this, it's not going to be a hard check on your credit report, and you can know ahead of time if you're going to get approved or not. And if you do move forward with the process, just know that typically they will do a hard check on your credit, but it's okay, because if you're adding back to that limit and if you're increasing your overall utilization, that one increase that you did, it's going to be very, very lower. It's going to be lower compared to that limit increase you're going to get. And, you'll be a little bit happier because now you'll have more access to credit. And the last thing I want you guys to do is make sure you're monitoring your credit. I can't stress this enough, that you want to make sure you're doing everything possible to check your credit every single month. So if you go to gotcreditmonitoring.com, you have several options of if you want to check your FICO score, your Vantage score, if you want to check your industry scores. By checking your credit score every single month, it will avoid you maybe not knowing you had a late payment, a collection. It might save you a phone call, okay? So the most important thing you can do as an adult, as a human being, as a business owner, and whatever it is that you do, is checking your credit on a regular basis. Because the last thing you want to do is be reactive. You always want to be proactive when it comes to your credit, because it's a little bit easier. Having payments on time, keeping utilization low, using your credit cards frequently, not closing your credit cards on your own, okay? And just using your credit wisely. And I can tell you that if you're paying your credit cards on time, you're keeping your balances low, it's a secret formula to get to that 850 credit score, which we all want. So just to recap, if your credit card limit lowers, make sure you're doing everything possible, okay? Make sure you're calling to get a credit limit increase. Make sure you're making your payments on time. Request a credit limit increase with other credit cards. Open a new credit card, and just make sure you monitor your credit. Now listen, I know that sometimes when your credit card limit lowers, it might seem like a little setback, but you can do things to get that limit back, because over time and as you practice good habits when it comes to your credit, not only are you going to get that limit back, but you're going to be exposed to more credit and more things down the road. So if you like this video, make sure you share it with a friend. Make sure you like and subscribe, and let me know below. Did your credit limit recently get lowered? Let's talk about it. I want to make sure that you have everything needed to get those limits back. I'll see you guys in the next video.